When it comes to the horse industry, tax laws are complicated and unique. That's why most people in the horse industry overpay on their taxes. We have the expertise to save you taxes. Why not get a second opinion from the top-rated accounting and tax firm in the thoroughbred industry, the Green Group? There's a reason the most successful owners, breeders, trainers, vets, and horsemen use the Green Group as their tax advisors. We save you taxes. Over the past 40 years, the Green Group founder, Len Green, has owned and bred some of the best racehorses in the history of the sport. His DJ stable competes at the highest level and has received the game's most prestigious honors. Len Green's in-depth, hands-on industry knowledge, combined with current-edge tax-saving strategies, produces positive tax savings results for clients. Take advantage of this special offer. The Green Group will give you a complimentary and confidential review of your tax return. Contact us at 732-634-5100 or visit our website at www.greenco.com.
The National HBPA has a long-standing mission through member benefits of supporting and promoting programs, along with entities that provide general benevolence and other beneficial programs for our affiliates and members. Proudly providing a national program in place to protect your assets in case of an injury or damage to property arising from your racing operation, with our partner Kevin Lavin at Sterling Thompson Equine. Each member of the National HBPA and its affiliates are eligible to be covered for various liability claims pertaining to all equine operations. For more information, contact the National HBPA or Sterling Thompson Equine by visiting sterlingthompson.com/HBPA-forms.
At Muirfield Insurance, we understand that every horse is more than just an animal. They are partners in achieving greatness. We offer comprehensive insurance for racehorses, sport horses, and farms, ensuring they receive the utmost care. This allows you to concentrate on what's truly important. Muirfield Insurance. We're here to protect your passion. Visit us today at muirfieldinsurance.com.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name's Gary Falter. I'm with the Jockey Club, and just like to welcome everyone to today's online panel. Now, this is the fourth panel in our series of 10 online Zoom panels this year. And today we're going to talk about horsemen's and more specifically, owner relations and owner liability. And this is a topic that actually was recommended by some owners last year. They gave us some feedback on topics to discuss. So thanks to those owners for recommending this. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize our sponsors, starting with our presenting sponsors. And the presenting sponsors are the Green Group and Bessemer Trust and Stoll Keenan Ogden. A huge thank you to our presenting sponsors. And today's sponsors of our panel are the National HBPA and Muirfield Insurance, and I believe you saw their ad just a moment ago. And our Q&A sponsor, which will take place at the end of the panel, is West Point Thoroughbreds. And just a special thanks to all of our sponsors for their continued support of thoroughbred ownership. And when you look at this screen, that's a large group of sponsors, who with their support, they make it possible for us to offer these webinars at no charge to you. So huge thanks to all of our sponsors. Okay, so let's introduce our speakers today. I'm going to start off with Morgan Richardson. Welcome, Morgan. And Morgan is the manager of Horsemen's Relations at Keeneland. Next is Chapman Hopkins. Welcome, Chapman.
Hey, Gary. Thanks for having me.
And Chapman is an attorney with Stoll Keenan Ogden, one of our sponsors, and he specializes in equine law. Next is Mike Levy. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Great. And Mike is the president of Muirfield Insurance, one of our sponsors for today's panel. And last but not least is Aaron Yagoda. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for including me today.
Great. Yeah, Aaron is vice president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, also known as NYTHA, and is also a successful thoroughbred owner. So great group. Appreciate you all being here. So let's get started. But first of all, I just want to let people know, if you have a question for our panelists, use your Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we already have one in the queue. So don't hesitate if you have a question at any time. ask it, and at the end of the panel, we'll get to as many questions as we can. All right, so let's just jump right in, panelists. So it's been said many times that the most important investor in our industry are thoroughbred owners. And why is this? Because without owners that purchase their horses and pay the bills for those horses, we clearly really don't have an industry. It's that simple. So today we're going to delve into the importance of owner relations and hospitality with racetracks, along with any potential liabilities that owners should know about. So we're going to start off with a question for Aaron and Morgan about owner relations and hospitality with the racetracks that they represent. So I'll start off with Aaron. Aaron, how do owners become a member of NISA, the Horsemen's Group, and what are some of the benefits to an owner belonging to a group like NISA?
So NISA stands for the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. Basically, the mission statement is the name. And anybody that's licensed in New York State as an owner and trainer is automatically included in NISA. Some people don't realize that they are, but they are. Now, for voting purposes, you have to have run a horse within the last year or so before the election and own at least 5%. But that doesn't mean you still aren't part of NISA. And NISA, basically, to make a quick answer, is they advocate for the horsemen with NYRA, with Albany, and the backstretch charities there, like the BCCA, which is the child care, the BESS, which is the backstretch employee services team, and then also the chaplaincy as well.
So anyone that's licensed in New York is a member of NISA, is that correct?
Correct. Even the people that are at Finger Lakes, they don't realize it, but they are sometimes are they get ballots, they don't understand why. But it's any New York State, it's a New York State licensee.
Okay, very good. Okay, so Morgan, I think it's safe to say that every owner wants to win a race at Keeneland. I mean, I think that's pretty safe to say that. So does Keeneland provide any type of a congratulatory award, a gift, or any kind of recognition when an owner wins a race there?
Owners out. I think a lot of how I honestly measure success from race meet from my standpoint is how many owners come out for each race. We love having owners and connections there. It's our favorite thing. And we just love hosting people on site and celebrating with them as well. So we have an amazing program called our Julep Cup sponsor program. So that's actually for pretty much any undercard race that is not a claimer. We actually present the winning owners with a hand engraved Julep Cup after their win, which is pretty incredible. And we're so fortunate. We have so many members of the community. We kind of limit sponsorship in that area just to farms. And so most of those races are actually sponsored by local farms and industry partners to try to help support that program. And then on top of that, we obviously have a lot of stakes kind of programs as well. So one of our bigger ones is going to be our milestone trophy program. So for each graded stakes race that you win at Keeneland, you will also win a gold julep cup. When you win 8 of those julep cups, then you get this beautiful hand engraved tray from Tiffany's with 8 little cartouches that we fill in with your horse's information. You win 8 more, you win the pitcher, you win 8 more, you get the bowl, you win 8 more, you get the base. So that's a really amazing program that I know that a lot of owners have enjoyed over the years. And then after every single stakes race, we bring all of our owners into what we call the director's room, and we do a fun little champagne toast. We get to watch a recorded version of your race and celebrate all the excitement all over again. And then you get a bag full of goodies. We've got little magic fairies in the background that actually bring a photo of your winning horse out onto the table for you when you get into the room. And then we've got branded hats and all sorts of fun other congratulatory items, as well as julep cups, of course, to help commemorate your win.
So I've got to ask you, what you were saying, if you win 8 julep cups, what do you get after that?
You get the Tiffany's tray.
And how often does that happen?
They're called milestone pieces.
Yeah.
So it's a tray, and then a pitcher, and then a bowl, and then a vase. So only 2 people have the bowl, just the Claiborne and Mr. Farish.
Claiborne, I remember them. Okay,
yeah, but there's quite a few people that have the tray, and a couple of people that have the pitcher as well. So we love being able to celebrate those milestones with everyone.
Oh, absolutely, great goal to have for sure. So, so question again for Morgan and Aaron, right along these lines: when owners have a horse entered in a race, can and should they expect certain amenities from the racetrack, like maybe special seating, parking, paddock access, dining? What's it like for you, Aaron, when you have a horse entered in New York?
So under every overnight race, Elise Jacobs will contact the managing owner and see if you need any box seats. If you have a horse in a stake, Naira will comp your dining room for you. And in terms of special parking, once you have an owner's badge at Naira, you can always park in the owner's lot. It was a little different this week at Belmont, but that was a one-time occurrence, and we'll see how that plays out for the next few years. And then, but Elise Jacobs, who I guess would be very similar to what Morgan does, she will help come give you any kind of accommodations you need to make sure you have a group. I don't know how it works with Keeneland, but I know that Elise does run into an issue where a lot of partnership, there's multiple people that own a horse, how many different people you have to contact. So I know right now she's contacting the managing owner, and then hopefully that managing owner will contact the other partners. But anything we can to try to accommodate while we're still at Aqueduct, at least.
Okay. And Morgan, as far as Keeneland accommodations for owners that have horses entered?
Yeah, we love having all of our friends out. We love the more owners, the better. We love it when people get to come watch their horses race. So for us, we have a little bit of a differentiation. So for undercard races, we have 4 passes to the bluegrass room or an outdoor box, whichever we can kind of accommodate to the owners, and then 2 to the trainers. And then for stakes races, we have 6 accommodations that get comped to really anywhere that you like. Most people go to the stakes lounge, but we know that everyone enjoys Keeneland in a slightly different way. So some people enjoy to be in the club, some people prefer different dining rooms. So we really try to accommodate to the best of our ability to kind of match whatever everyone's preferences are. But yeah, so 4 for undercard and then 6 for stakes. And then of course, Aaron, to your point, we have so many fun syndicates and people that have slightly larger groups. So we always try to work with all those groups as well as we can to accommodate as many people as possible. And our executive team is amazing here. I mean, they allow us to hold a good amount of space so that we know that there's some of those bigger partnerships. So we try to hold a little bit of extra inventory on big days to make sure that we can accommodate where possible. Sometimes the groups are really big and we've got to get a little creative. But for the most part, we love being able to accommodate everyone, and trainers as well as jockeys and their families. So we try our best to accommodate all the different partners that we can on each of the horses in all the different areas that they prefer to sit.
Okay. So what about on days when owners are at the racetrack and they don't have a horse entered? I remember one racetrack, and I think it was Oaklawn Park. We were in a meeting with a lot of different folks who had your position, Morgan and Elise, talking about that. And they said, when any owner entered the racetrack and they swiped their card, a concierge person met them before they even, made it to the clubhouse to seat them and where they'd like to be seated. So what happens at the tracks in New York and in Keeneland, if anything, when an owner just shows up to the races?
So in New York, we have a horse. Oh, go ahead. You want to go first? Okay. So in New York, we have a horseman's lounge. It's open every day for owners that may not have a horse running, has light refreshments. Recently, Andrew Offerman, who's a director of racing, opened up Equestrius again, while people can go up there and buy a lunch there. But that's for the most part. We are dealing with Aqueduct for the next few years, so they'll be more than happy if you want to come to Aqueduct. They'll make arrangements for you. Saratoga, which is similar to Keeneland, is very popular, and they'll still try to give you the best arrangements they can after they satisfy the people that are coming in for stakes. But if you want to go to Aqueduct, you just reach out to Elise or Andrew Offerman's office, and they'll make sure you have a great experience for the day, the best you can in Ozone Park, Queens.
Okay.
Yeah, so for us, it's a little bit of even what Aaron said earlier. So for us, if you have that KHRC license, which we recommend everyone getting, that will gain you access into complimentary horseman's parking every day, and then also access for yourself and a guest into the track. We always try to accommodate as many other requests as we can. Similar to Elise, we kind of wait until those overnights are out and we know exactly what the runners are that are going to be there for that day. And then we always try to give priority to people that have horses with active horses running that day. But then any inventory over and above what we need, we always offer first to any horsemen just in general that are there to enjoy the races for the day. Or if people are flying in from out of town, obviously to watch the horse race on a Saturday and they're here for a Friday and Sunday as well, we always try our best to accommodate on those bigger days too.
Okay. So several years ago, and I think it was about 10, 11 years ago, there was an independent study performed and interviewed owners from around the country just about owner relations and hospitality when attending the races, whether they had a horse entered or not. And honestly, the findings from the study, it just wasn't very favorable as it relates to owners feeling valued by racetracks. And again, that was 10, 11 years ago, and every major racetrack was involved. So since that study it was conducted, how do you believe owner relations and hospitality have improved at the racetrack? I mean, that was a long time ago, and I sat through a lot of the focus groups with the owners, and I was pretty surprised by some of their responses as it related to owner hospitality. But I believe it has improved, but I'd just like to hear from Morgan and Aaron on what your thoughts are, and especially over this last 10 or 11 years. And then Mike and Chapman, if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
So Andrew Offerman, when he took over recently, they sent out a survey trying to make it the best we can. And like I said a few minutes ago, we are dealing with aqueducts, so it's a lot harder. No, we're not getting the owners that we want out there, but we really want to make it an owner experience for them. Just whatever, everyone wants something different. Some people come to the track, they want to sit in a restaurant. Some want to sit outside. Saratoga is home, very hard to screw up. Everyone's got their great day at the races in Saratoga. And I looked at the plans of the new Belmont, and there's going to be some amazing choices and accommodations that everybody can, whatever you want when the new Belmont comes, you'll be able to get, whichever way you like to enjoy your day at the races with your friends. So while we're here in Aqueduct for the next 2 years, we want the people to come out as best they can, but there's only limited places for them to attend. Being a racino, there's no passes to get in anymore, so everyone just walks in for free, which we don't have someone greeting them at the door. You can come in many entrances, but the horseman lot is always available for a horseman any day you want to come there.
Okay, Aaron, so take off your NISA hat for a moment, and as an owner, what's your experience been over the last several years?
Well, I've grown up at the track, so I've been sitting in I sit in my grandfather's box D17 for the last. My grandfather had that box when I was a little kid. So when I run a horse, no matter how cold, I go sit in that box. But they are trying. I mean, every racetrack you go to, they all have different people that are trying to make the most of it. And I think it's improved. We realize that owners are very special, and that they want to feel special. If there's a new time owner at the track, I try to take them give them a tour of the parts of the track that usually are not accessible to other people, and they kind of get a kick of that. Sometimes I take them to the gate, wherever I could take them to make them feel like they have a special thing that's not available to everyone else that's at the races. Okay.
And Morgan, in that study 11 years ago, Keeneland got some favorable responses, because I believe Keeneland does go the extra mile, but even then had some areas to improve. What are your thoughts on how things have gotten better over the years?
Yeah, I feel like our team, especially the team that we have right now, is just so focused on horsemen and making sure that they are really why we're here, right? I mean, Keeneland was kind of our tagline is, by horsemen for horsemen. And I think just really honing in and focusing on that and helping celebrate all parts of it, because it is the owners, but it's also the consigners and the buyers and agents, and making sure that all the people that are involved and the legacy and the careers of these horses get to enjoy it and are celebrated for it. And our staff loves celebrating alongside them and making sure that everyone has a great day at the races. Because that's what keeps it going, right? Like, I mean, it is business sometimes, and it is legal sometimes, but at the end of the day, we're all in this to have fun and watch horses and be a part of the sport. So I think the more that we can support that, the better. Okay. I know that our team works really hard to make sure that everyone has a really fun day at the races.
Okay, so I just want to remind the audience, if you have any questions for Aaron or Morgan on what we've just talked about, please use the Q&A button. So I think now's a good time to bring Mike and Chapman into the conversation, and we'll circle back with you, Aaron and Morgan, because I've got a couple other questions for you guys. So Mike, let's start with you. So when an owner buys a racehorse or maybe raises it from birth, there's a lot of investment, and a lot of that investment can be at risk. So what are some of the insurance options that an owner has access to that can help reduce or eliminate some of those financial risks?
So the most common insurance is called mortality insurance. It is basically a term life policy for the horse. Most of them run 12 months. There are variations, but it protects the owner for the value of the policy in case there is a catastrophic accident or an illness that unfortunately the horse doesn't make it through. That's the most common way to protect yourself. Everybody's investment is different to them as relates to their financial future. So the value, most people use purchase price or multiple of stud fee if they're breeding the horse. But it's a personal choice as to how much you want to protect your investment.
Okay, so that was going to be my follow-up question. How do you establish the value of the horse? So you raise a horse, it's a yearling now, you paid a $25,000 stud fee, you've got all sorts of board bills, vet bills. I mean, can all that be taken into account to establish the value of the horse?
It can. So we sell something called agreed value policies, which are, if you're paying a premium for a $100,000 policy, that's what you're going to get if there is a claim. So it's easy when it's purchase price, because that's what the horse cost, and that's what it's worth until it proves that it's either worth more or less. And that usually takes a year, maybe two. In terms of your investment, the owner and myself and the underwriter will agree what is a functional investment stage, and we agree on a value. So that's how you get to it.
Okay, so and there's nothing wrong with, say your horse is worth 100,000, a person could insure it for 50,000 if they choose to. No, nothing wrong with that.
Happens all the time. It's a personal choice.
So in that case, if the horse is insured for 50,000 and then maybe a year later the owner wants to insure it for a higher value, is that a very difficult process, or is it just going back to the records?
It's not. It's a justification of value. We do quarterly reviews on our entire portfolio based on race record or pedigree updates. So it's not a hard process, and it's something that we do every day. And you only pay for the amount of days in a year at that particular value. So if you want to reduce your premium because the horse is not performing well, the day you make that reduction, your premium will go down for the remaining days on the policy.
Okay, all right, good point. Okay, so Chapman, got a question for you. So you, as an equine lawyer that specializes in equine law, what are some of the legal liabilities that an owner should be aware of and prepared to hopefully avoid?
Sure. So, I tell everybody that's starting out, unfortunately, anybody can sue anybody for anything at any time, right? You don't always have to have a great claim for it. And I don't say that as a way to scare anybody off, but it's just a reality of business, whether it's horses or anything else. And so I think I use that as a way to frame the importance of thinking through liability on the front end and finding ways to protect yourself. We were just talking about insurance coverages. As ownership structures get more complex, as purchase and sale transactions get more complex, insurance is becoming an increasingly important component of ownership and of purchase and sale transactions. And I think first thing I would say is encourage everybody to have a good relationship with an insurance broker. Make sure that you're talking through those things on the front end. Make sure you're keeping them up to date as valuations of your horse change, as you contemplate bringing on additional owners, to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. From an overall liability standpoint, I think of it in terms of several buckets. So you have personal injury and property damage type claims. So a horse kicks somebody, or a horse gets loose and hits a car, breaks through a fence, anything like that. What types of insurance coverages and contractual protections can you put in place for personal injury and property damages? You have regulatory compliance type liability. So making sure you're adhering to all the state and federal regulations that you need to comply with as an owner, and ensuring that your trainer and your other owners comply with those. A couple of less obvious ones that are especially applicable as we get into racing syndicates and ownership syndicates: investment liability. So if you are owning or managing a racing syndicate and somebody is serving as the manager, the person who's responsible for bringing on investors, making sure that you're doing that in a way that's compliant with securities laws, making sure that as in carrying out your role as a manager, you're complying with your fiduciary and other obligations to your investors so that there's no liability or exposure there. And then another category I just call general expense obligations. So again, more prevalent in co-ownerships or racing syndicates, but making sure that you are on the front end providing for how expenses for farriers, for vets, for board and upkeep, for trainers, all those things are accounted for, and what you do when and if somebody doesn't fulfill their obligation. So again, big picture, there are any number of liabilities that could come into play, but I think thinking through them on the front end and making sure either through appropriate contracts or through appropriate insurance coverage, you're doing your best to cover your bases. That's really what's the most important.
So you believe with the combination of contracts and agreements and insurance that most owners can cover a lot of those areas?
I do. And again, ultimate liability is different from could somebody try to assert a claim? Of course, anybody can try to assert a claim for any of those things, but there really are some robust insurance coverages. There are, I think, contracts and contractual protections are becoming increasingly more accepted within the industry, especially as we have more sophisticated investors and businessmen and women come into the game. I think we all know it for a long time was an industry based on handshake, and there's value to that, and that trust should still be there. But I think it's becoming increasingly important to make sure you're diligent about getting a contract in place, getting insurance in place, and defining roles and responsibilities of all the parties.
So Mike, anything you want to add as it relates to
Yeah.
policies there?
I do. So one thing that I didn't touch on, which is important for everybody to understand, if you buy a horse for 100,000, you run it a couple of times, it doesn't perform. If you drop it in for 50, claiming race, the minute that gate opens, your horse is worth 50 in terms of your insurance property. So it's a hard and fast rule that there is no wiggle room on. You will get your return premium, but the minute that horse runs for a tag, that is what it's worth. That is what it's for sale for on that given day. Now, let's say it wins by 10 lengths for 50. Can you have a discussion with your carrier that, well, it's worth more than 50? Of course. But on that, at that minute, it's worth 50. The second thing, Chapman was discussing what we call racehorse owners liability policies. And they cover the owner for anything that could happen unforeseen. Your general umbrellas that people carry, for whether it's on their homeowners or even if they have a farm policy, it does not cover that. And people think, well, I have a $10 million umbrella, or I have a $5 million umbrella. Anything to do with racehorses is excluded. Racehorse owners liability is just what it says. It's very inexpensive. It's $300 a year for 4 horses, and it covers anything. Horse kicks a car, horse, something like that. And it's something that everybody should strongly consider if they're trying to reduce their risk exposure.
Okay, great point. I wasn't even aware of that. Learn something every one of these webinars. A great point, Mike. So Aaron, you want to chime in at all?
No, I just wanted to ask Mike if he could back up and maybe tell people that there are different rates at different ages of a horse too, right? Is it like a mare and foal versus a racehorse? Maybe some people would like to know that.
For mortality, yes. The liability is standard. Before I get to that, Aaron, the one thing that everybody should know in regard to follow up on Chapman's, the racehorse owner's liability covers your legal costs. So if you are frivolously targeted or sued, your liability policy will cover your legal costs to defend yourself. And further to your point, yes, everything is done risk rated by use. So a racehorse is a higher rate than a broodmare. An older horse is an older, meaning older than 12, is the rates start to creep up just like life insurance in people. So yes, there are different rates for different classes and uses of horse during the life cycle.
Okay, great point. Great. So Chapman, you talked about contracts, and And I think we're really an odd industry in that owners, they hire trainers to train their horses, but rarely, if ever, is a contract or a written agreement in place. Can you explain why this is, and is that changing at all?
Yeah, so it really goes back to what I mentioned a moment ago. It's just a vestige of it being an industry that's built on custom. For decades, nobody ever had a contract in place for much of anything, let alone for a relationship with the trainer. And I think that trainer owner relationship has largely been one of trust, that you trust the trainer to do his job. Owner has his or her job, trainer has their job, and you shake their hand and trust them to do that. I think the industry has this uncanny way of having sophisticated businessmen and women that would never do anything without a contract outside of the horse industry, but they get in the industry and all of a sudden passion comes into play and they don't want to rock the boat. And I think the trainer owner relationship is probably one of the last areas that just doesn't have contracts in place. I think some of it is nobody wants to be first to market with it. You don't want to be the first owner demanding that your trainer put a contract in place when they have an infinite number of other owners who would love to use their services. On the flip side of that, you don't want to be the first trainer that requires it, because you're competing for owners. You've seen it in public be litigated fairly recently, and the absence of a contract leaves a lot of ambiguity out there in terms of day rates changing and what responsibilities, expectations you have for when the horses go to the track, what you're doing in terms of race placement and all that. The reality is that I don't see that changing fundamentally anytime soon. I think what owners have to keep in mind is they just need to be diligent, right? Even though you don't have a contract in place, it's smart to paper up, so to speak, your expectations. Send your trainer text messages that lay out what you expect. Send emails to make sure that communication is going on adequately between, and express your expectations. At the end of the day, the owner owns the horse, and they are permitted to do what they want with the horse.
Okay.
Where you run into issues with that is the reality is that the trainer is owed money for their services. The trainer is providing board and upkeep. And the trainer, a lot of times, if the horse is on the track, is controlling the registration certificate. And those things provide the trainer leverage to make sure that they're getting paid, and make it probably more difficult for the owner to make a sudden change. And so it's really about, even if you don't have a contract, make sure the communication is there as much as possible.
Well, I mean, that leads into my next question, because we're operating in a very different world right now as it relates to HISA and a lot of the rule changes and the consistency. So let me just ask you, do owners have any like direct liabilities, or maybe better said, what impact do owners have when a horse has a medication violation or there's an injury to the horse or jockey? So talk about that a little bit, Mike and Chapman. On again, we're operating in a different world now, and this being a panel and a webinar for owners, what should owners be aware of as it relates to violations in this new world under HISA?
Chapman, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I can start off. I mean, as you alluded to, HISA is now the federal framework that we're largely operating under from a safety and welfare and from a medication standpoint. And as I suspect many people know, if there are already owners, HISA outlines who the responsible person is for a horse. And for horses in training, the responsible person is the trainer. And so from a medication standpoint, for violations of medication or safety rules, the primary liability would fall on the responsible person, who's going to be the trainer. Owners are largely insulated from any kind of regulatory liability, penalty liability associated with that, unless, of course, the owner is directly involved in violating that law. They knowingly administer medication, they facilitated something like that. So under that framework, the trainers are taking on that liability. Now, if the horse is outside of training, and owned off of a training facility, then the owner is going to be the responsible person for that, and would have that liability. But you're right. I mean, HISA is the dynamic we're under right now, and some of those rules change as they should to reflect, changing thoughts on medication levels and administration times and things like that, it's really incumbent upon an owner, I think, to make sure that they stay abreast of that and to make sure that they're selecting trainers who have the ability and the willingness to comply with those regulations.
The only thing I'd add to that is there is a segment of liability that exists in terms of if a trainer is suspended and the horse is often suspended with it. So the horse could be out of competition, which could be a financial burden because it's not allowed to earn. So that liability does exist.
Yeah, and I should say along those lines, there's liability on the trainers, the responsible person in terms of a fine or a suspension, but oftentimes if there is a medication violation in a race, the horse is going to be automatically disqualified and the purse is going to be redistributed, which obviously impacts the owner. So while it's not liability per se, the owner's going to have secondary impact by virtue of they're going to lose their purse and the horse is going to be disqualified and potentially lose the black type or the condition.
Okay, so that was one of the points I was trying to get at. What direct impact does a violation have on an owner? So Mike, could a horse be put on the shelf for weeks, months, or does it vary? Does it depend on the violation?
Currently, if a horse is deemed to be unsound or scratched from a race, and not allowed to run, not from a medication violation, but it's not sound enough to run, you're going to be on the shelf for 14 days. Then you're going to have to work for the state vet. You're going to have to, come off the vet's list. And everybody thinks it's this window of time, but a lot of times that window of time gets stretched because of, people want to make sure their horses are sound. So a horse can, yes, you have the financial realities of losing your earnings if the horse is disqualified from a medication violation. You also have if your horse is being trained and is entered and not sound, that horse is going to be placed onto a vet's list, and to get off of it is a process. Aaron, you can chime in on this.
Yeah, and to add what Mike was saying, it's very true, especially with voided claims now. You read about voided claims, which you didn't used to have. The first void is, the 30 days, and then it goes to 45. And by the third void, your horse is basically ruled off. So you'd have to be you got to be pretty gutsy to claim one that's been voided a few times, like Mike said. So that is incumbent on the owner. And that's been happening quite often with more and more voided claims being prevalent these days.
Yeah.
Okay, but to be clear, if a trainer is suspended for any kind of violation, medication violation, we'll say, the horse is under that trainer's care, the owner has maybe 8 or 10 of them, could then go to another trainer, I would assume, as long as that horse isn't involved in that violation.
That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, yeah. So there's no impact to the owner being able to have his horses race under another trainer if indeed that trainer has been suspended. Okay, great.
No, but of course that, you have to deal with the logistical issues of moving the horses, getting them up to speed, potentially moving them back. And there are classes of medications that would result, if your horse is a subject horse, they may be taken out of competition for a period of time. So if the violation has to do with a steroid or a more serious medication or substance, that could result in your particular horse.
I mean, is that new, or is that something that's been around regardless of HISA?
Which aspect is that?
Well, horses, has been tested positive, for some substance. I mean, in the past, before HISA, would that horse then be put on a list for some time? Before
HISA, it was regulated at a state-by-state level. And although there were consistency among the various jurisdictions, each jurisdiction was a little bit different. So it really depended on which jurisdiction you were in, which medication you were specifically involved in. There was a little bit of inconsistency between that.
Okay, but now we're more on a consistent playing field. Got it. Okay.
And to add to what Mike was saying, to get off a vet's list, you have to pass a drug test as well. So you just not work, Mike says you work for the state vet, but they will draw blood and test your horse. And if you don't if you have Butte or something in the system, you stay on the vets list. So just to add to what Mike said earlier.
Okay.
Yep.
And just to remind the audience, if you have a question for any of our panelists, please use the Q&A button. We do have a couple questions in the queue. So if you have something you'd like to ask one of the panelists, please enter that in the Q&A section. So I want to jump back to Morgan and Aaron again, and then we'll come back to Chapman and Mike. This morning in today's Thoroughbred Daily News, there was an excellent article about supporting partnerships and syndicates. I don't know if all of you saw, but it's an excellent article. Talk about how Keeneland and the NYRA racetracks are supportive of both partnerships and syndicates, because, you know, with outfits like My Racehorse and many syndicates, West Point, the Eclipse, you know, there's dozens of them out there. You know, how are racetracks accommodating these large groups? Because it looks like it's a trend that's here and it's a trend that's going to stay.
So I know in New York, I can basically speak for New York. It's pretty tricky sometimes because a lot of the big partnerships, you know who the managing owner is. You don't really know. The racetrack doesn't know every person that owns a piece of that horse. Not the My Racehorse, which is the extreme, but maybe some of the larger partnerships. So it's hard to try to accommodate everybody. And you know the game has changed a lot, where one guy would own 50 horses. Now 50 guys own one horse. So the people like Leonard Green or Klarovich, you know, they have the same one vote, yet they own, you know, 200 horses. So it becomes very tricky to understand everybody. And if you look at some horses like National Treasure that won the other day, he's owned by a multitude of people and some of them are a multitude of partnerships. So who knows how many people own that? So I don't know how. I feel bad for the racetracks when they have to try to figure out, especially who to give the trophy to. I mean, I don't know what Keeneland does, but we also talked about that at NYRA. You know, 9 people own the horse, you get one trophy. Do you pass it around like the Stanley Cup? What do you do? So maybe Morgan has a better answer than I do.
So for us, I love spreadsheets. They're my best friend. We have all sorts of databases with all sorts of contact information for all the friends. But then also we have amazing partnerships. And I just feel like so much of this industry is relationships. I feel like especially in April, October, and during the sales, like Caitlin and, you know, Danielle and Kelsey, like they're my best friends. I feel like I talk to them every single day because, you know, those bigger syndicates, they do have horses that race here pretty much every day and multiples a day. So, I mean, and they're so great to work with. I love them all so much. They are flexible, they're understanding, and they'll give me heads up way in advance to be like, hey, I know that overnights aren't out, but here are the big horses. I've got a pinning for these races. I think this many people are coming. So, I mean, those managing people at the largest syndicates do such a fantastic job. I'm really appreciative for all their help. But to your point of the people that maybe don't have a managing partner like Danielle for West Point, and they're just kind of doing it on their own, we try to kind of be that person for them a little bit. And so a lot of times when their horses come out in the overnights, we'll put them all on one big email. So for all the stakes runners here, we reach out to every single person individually. But then per horse, we try to reach out to the group as a whole to say, hey, collectively, who from this group is coming? Just so we can kind of make sure that no wires are getting crossed. And to your all's point too, I mean, you know that sometimes it's trainers that make accommodations and sometimes it's owners that make accommodations. So for some of those larger syndicates, like the McPeaks, like Kenny pretty much makes all reservations for all of his owners, and he's got a girl on his team that helps to make accommodations. So it's a very much so case by case basis. But we kind of figure it out. We just all make really good notes. And I just think so much of it is relationship based. And that's what the industry is all about. And just working through it together. I think if you just explain both of the sides and where you're coming from, it's really easy to find middle ground. To your point about trophies for us, for instance, for like the milestone program that we have here, the trophy and the credit goes to the silks that the horse raced in. So that's kind of the way that we've tried to help manage that a little bit, is that it used to be kind of the first listed, but I know that a lot of partnerships are 50-50 or even percentages. So we've kind of ended up going with more or less a program that the trophy goes to whoever silks the horses raced it, unless I'm told differently by all the partners combined. So
okay.
Yeah, if I could add on to that, you know, co-ownerships and syndicates are carrying the day right now. And some co-ownerships have 5 owners, some of them have 10 owners, 2 of which are partnerships in and of themselves. And then you have My Racehorse that may have 200 or 300. And I try to encourage anybody who's putting one of those together to spend as much time in putting your agreement together, focusing on those aspects as really anything, because a lot of those investors aren't coming in because they have some expectation of profit. They're coming in for the experience. And when things go wrong, it's usually because somebody didn't get the paddock pass, or they didn't get the tickets, or the silks were allocated wrong, or to Morgan's point, nobody thought through on the front end who was going to get the trophy and who was going to pay for it. Does it just go to the silks? You really have to think through all those things, even down to who's going to sit in front of the microphone at the post-win press conference. Those all create conflicts for personalities. And I think it's another instance of really, especially with these racing syndicates and co-ownerships, you got to think through those logistical, experiential aspects on the front end to make sure you're allocating those opportunities fairly.
Yeah, and to add to that, in New York, we have a silks rotation program where you could put it in with Kelly and let them know which way, you know, the silks swap every other race. Sometimes it's only going to be in that one person silks, like you said, because that does create a lot of controversy for some of the owners, and we don't want that to happen. So there are programs like that available at certain tracks.
As far as the trophies go, go ahead, Mark.
Good.
Oh, you're fine.
Good, Mike.
As far as the trophies go, you can order duplicates, right? As long as somebody's going to pay for them, right?
Oh,
That's
yes,
right.
we have tons of duplicates, duplicate
is it
saddle
the person owning
towels,
it?
duplicate
Is it-
julep
yeah.
cups. Yeah.
Okay.
So Mike, with
Definitely.
all these racing syndicates out there, and I'm sure there's more to come, you know, how can a investor ensure their investment if, say, they've invested in half a dozen horses with a various syndicate?
So we work with many of the top syndicates in the business, and I've seen it done different ways, and that's up to the syndicate manager. Some choose the syndicate manager is in charge of establishing the value. Each horse is in a separate LLC for the most part, in some of the bigger syndicates, and the syndicate manager will determine the value of that horse. We also work with other partnerships that the syndicate manager will say, we're going to insure this horse for $500,000. You own 2%. Check this box if you want insurance. Check this box if you want to opt out. So there's many different ways to do it. Again, backing up Chapman, it's very important that the syndicate manager thinks about that stuff up front to take away anything that could go wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of active discussion and forethought, especially if you're going to have these co-ownerships, or a co-ownership is selling a piece to another party. One party has insurance through one person, one party has insurance through the other. Who's going to carry it? How are decisions going to be made? Hopefully everybody's in the opportunity that the horse becomes very valuable or is a stallion prospect, making sure that there's enough capacity to ensure what the potential value of that horse is. There are a lot of moving parts.
Okay. So let's jump into a new line of questioning. So when an owner buys a horse at auction, when does the liability for that purchase horse begin? Is it at the drop of the hammer, or after they sign the purchase ticket, or after they remove the horse from the sale? So when does that liability start, and how does an owner get insurance coverage for when that liability begins?
There is something called fall of the hammer insurance, and it's called that because that's when the liability begins. So you have acknowledged that you are the purchaser. That horse is let out of the ring by its handler. If it damages something or someone or itself through no fault of anybody else's, you are liable to pay the bill on that horse, whether it be for the animal itself or for any potential damage it may cause other people or property. So we recommend that you have a relationship with a broker. You let them know that you're going to be purchasing some horses, or you're going to be trying to. There's an electronic result sheet that we can all follow. Everybody in my office can follow. And if we see that you've purchased that horse, you're automatically covered. You don't need to call. If you don't want the insurance, then you should call and say, or you want less insurance, then it's on the purchaser to establish its risk tolerance. But we suggest you make arrangements in advance when you go to public auction if you want to buy insurance.
Okay. So a similar question on claiming horses. When does the new owner take responsibility for the claimed horse? Is it when the gate opens or after they cross the finish line?
When the gate opens, it's your horse pending if there's a shake or avoided claim. So the gate opens, you're the owner. Any money that earns during that race, though, reverts to the previous owner. So you don't get the purse money, even though you have the liability. But we're covered a lot now. You know, it's an automatic voided claim if the horse should go down in a race or, you know, not finish the race. It's an automatic voided claim. So there are a lot more protection now that Mike than when our parents were playing that.
For sure.
The buyer beware claiming box.
So I assume
Yep.
that an owner could get claiming insurance so that if they drop a claim in, it's covered from the time the gate opens. Is that true?
That is true, and some people do take that route. However, there will not be double indemnification, i.e., if the claim is voided and the horse doesn't finish the race, you don't have to pay for the claim, so you're not going to get paid on top of that.
Okay. So question for
And
Aaron.
and there
Go
will
ahead.
be no premium. There would be no premium charged either.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep.
So Aaron, as an owner and you're vice president with NISA, what are some of the most important issues as it relates to owner relations with racetracks? Purses, stewards rulings, licensing. So what are some of those issues?
Well, first of all, with NISA, you know, we're there to answer any questions you have. We can help you walk you through your licensing when you come time to renewal, since you already had a license to become a member. For the purses, we do try to work with NIRA on that. We are racing, you know, something that's different in New York than other jurisdictions. We're running 12 months a year. So there's a lot of massaging of the purses to try to keep our we don't have a boutique meet other than really Saratoga. So we have to try to keep our 12 months going all year. But we do talk with NIRA about winter racing dates, since that's in the legislature, and we go back and forth on that, try to make sure that we don't lose any, you know, handle throughout the year, because lots of times the winter betting helps pay for the Saratoga purses. For steward rulings, that's the gaming commission. You really don't get far. We just get a lot of whining and crying. We really don't do much. We try to hold your hand, but you really don't have much of that. And well, one thing that NISA does help, which a lot of owners don't, if you want to need to retire your horse, whether he's injured, whether he's not competitive anymore, that will help you place your horse. And we really want people to take advantage of that we'll try to, you know, walk you through that retirement process for your horse, because, you know, as we're all in it together, we have to make sure that they have a second life after racing.
Right, exactly. Okay. So one last question, and before I go to that, just want to remind the audience, you can submit a question now. We're going to get through this last question, then we're going to take a break and come back for your question. So Mike and Chapman, are there workmen's compensation laws in most racing states that impact owners and ways to insure oneself? And what does an owner need to know about that? Oh, Mike, you're muted.
Sorry.
There you go.
They vary state to state. Most states require work comp. The work comp is paid for either through a state funded program, a jurisdiction program, or the trainer will pay a fee, which is usually passed on to the owner. It varies from state to state on what the premium rates are. And again, it should not be, the trainer is responsible for his employees, and the jockeys have a program for themselves. For the owner, as far as work comp, unless they have a farm or they have paid employees that are going to be around the horses, you know, to advise them or whatever, they don't need to be worried about work comp.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of times it comes up, owners do get concerned about injuries to jockeys, exercise riders, grooms, things like that. Because those jockeys, grooms, exercise riders are not employees or independent contractors of the owner, they should not have liability for that. They should be protected through workers' comp by whoever's employing them, largely the trainer.
Okay. So here's one last question before we get to the Q&A. So this is a question for all the panelists. What is your best advice that you can give owners regarding horsemen's relations, hospitality, relations with racetracks and all the various jurisdictions, and owner liability? So, just all the different things we talked about. What's the best advice you could give owners as it relates to any of those items? Morgan, you want to start off?
Sure, yeah. I think for us, like just give us a call. We're super easy to chat with. I'm always happy to help. I mean, in my department, we even help with the concierge services. So if you need recommendations on flights or hotels, dinner reservations, we can help with all the logistics there too. I know that the rest of my team that handles different logistics on race days and entering your horses from top to bottom, even on the sales side, everyone's just very happy to help. So never hesitate to reach out if we can help with anything for sure.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
I agree. Just reach out. This is a game we're supposed to be enjoying it. It's supposed to be fun. It's something you can do with your family. It's a cheap form of entertainment. You can't go to a football game or a basketball game without being out thousands of dollars these days, or at least hundreds of dollars. Make the most of it. Feel privileged you're an owner. Don't be ashamed that you own a small percentage of a horse. You can be the next big owner one day. So really just be in it and enjoy it, and reach out if you don't know. There's horsemen's groups. No question is a dumb question. We'll try to help everybody that we can, because we're all in it together. Even though we're competing, we all need the industry to rise as one.
And Aaron, you represent NISA. Of course, that's New York. There's the National HBPA, which is in a lot of different states. There's the Thoroughbred Owners of California. So there's a number of different horsemen's groups that, depending on what jurisdiction you're racing in, they're there as your advocate.
Right.
Okay.
And to follow up on that, everybody on this call, as well as if you're in this industry as a professional, as we are, you're in it. It's not just a job. A lot of us have been in it for a lifetime, and we need you, and we're there to help.
Good point.
Well said.
Couldn't agree more with all that. From the attorney side, from the liability side, I just try to encourage everybody to take a little bit extra time on the front end to think through as many issues as you can, even some of those uncomfortable conversations about allocation of credits, silks, expenses, those things. A little bit of extra time on the front end can save a massive headache on the back end.
Okay, good advice. All right. So that concludes our panel discussion. Now we're going to move into our Q&A from the audience session. But before we do that, we'll sort through the questions, and we'll come back. So we're going to hear from our Q&A sponsor, West Point Thoroughbreds. So watch this, and we'll be back in just a moment.
How do you become the gold standard in racing partnerships? One horse, one partner, one victory at a time. Congratulations to all our partners who have made West Point the gold standard for the last 3 decades.
Okay, so let's jump into, here's the first question. So how can you verify that a trainer is current with his WC payments?
I think they mean workers' comp.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, I said WC. I'm thinking, what does that stand for? Workman's comp. How do you know? Ask.
If they're not current with their workers' comp payments, they're going to have a problem with the stewards in most cases. Aaron, would you agree?
Yeah, the racetrack they'll find them, and you'll know through the grapevine if there's an issue. The horses aren't running all of a sudden, then you might have an issue going there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think we covered this question, but it's in here anyhow. So are there liability insurance available to protect owners? And I think we've already hit on that. Mike, what was that? Racehorse
owners liability. Standard coverage is $1 million per occurrence, $2 million annually. It's a very small premium of about $300 a year, and I highly encourage everybody to strongly consider it.
Okay. All right, great. So what percentage of owners insure mortality for their horses and training at each level? So claiming, allowance, stakes. I mean, does it vary as to what level the horses is racing at, or do
It
most owners insure everything?
The best analogy that I make is if you went to a flea market and you bought a painting for $100 because you liked it, and and the $100 was you bought it because you liked it and you could afford it, and you hung the painting on the wall, and you found out a couple of years later that it was worth 25,000, and you were going through your homeowner's insurance renewal. Would you insure that painting for the 25,000 or would you not? It's a personal preference. There is no answer to the question other than how much does a loss affect you either personally, financially, or professionally? I mean, that's it.
So there just really isn't a 50% of owners, insure their stakes horses, 25% their claim. It's a personal preference.
It's a personal preference. It is not mandatory. It is a personal preference based on your risk tolerance and how that's going to affect you if there's a loss.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all about risk tolerance. And again, going back to co-ownerships and racing syndicates, I think the important thing, if you're managing it and you're responsible for bringing the investors on, making sure you're transparent about what insurance is or is not being provided. You don't want your investors or your co-owners to assume that you have insurance in place only to find out on the back end that you didn't.
Okay. So here's one more question in the queue, and it's our last question. So if you have something, go ahead and send it in now. But purses at many racetracks, including Keeneland and the NYRA racetracks, are at an all-time high. Do you think this is a temporary condition, or do you believe that the current purse structure is here to stay and possibly even higher purses in the future? So, $100,000 maiden races, $120,000 allowance races. Aaron, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, in New York, I can't speak for the other jurisdictions. We have a pretty healthy purse cushion. So like after COVID came out, a lot of racetracks couldn't start right away because they relied a lot on their money from the racinos. Even though we get money from that as well, we have a good cushion there. So in New York, it's gonna stay quite healthy for quite a while. But like I said before, with 12 months a year, so Andrew Offerman's racing office or Dave O'Rourke and NYRA and NYTHA have to get together to make sure that we can keep people racing all year round because we are 12 months a year. So, but other than that, we're pretty healthy with our purse cushion.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Well, here's a new question just came in. Go ahead.
I was gonna say on my front, I mean, it's not exactly what I deal in necessarily, but I do feel like, kind of rising tides rises all boats. I feel like the more that owners are engaged and the more that people are out, more people that are buying horses, that are interested in horses, racing their horses, buying horses, the bigger fields you have, usually the bigger purses that you have, the more that we're able to invest back in to the industry. And I know that from the Keeneland standpoint, no one's necessarily making a profit off of Keeneland. We put so much of our profits back into purse structures, and a lot of our programs too, like the Julep Cup sponsor program that I was talking about earlier, where we're essentially taking money and people helping to sponsor those lower races, but then just putting it right back into the races themselves. So I think it is a good thing to come. I think that we've got some new fun players that have entered here lately, and I think that having great hospitality at the track so that they can have fun enjoying their horses race is a big part of it, because the more they're excited about it, the more they're willing to invest and excited to invest. I think that just continues into higher purse structures for sure.
Okay. Good point.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an increasingly competitive environment. Everybody wants to fill races and fill cards. You've got a full crop that's declining, so with fewer horses available to fill those slots, you've got to incentivize owners to participate and make it as profitable as possible of an endeavor. So I do, as long as there's the funds to back it up, I don't think you're going to see purses decrease anytime soon.
Okay. So here's a question just came in as we were talking about that. So with an LLC, who should be insured, the owner or the LLC?
The LLC.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah, the
LLC.
LLC should be taking out insurance on behalf of the LLC of which people are members. And of course, with an LLC structure, whole point of that is to insulate the owners or the members of that LLC from liability. So as long as you're following corporate formalities, you should be insulated. Some people go the extra mile, and if they're going to participate in an LLC, they're going to do that through their own LLC. And so they may have insurance for their respective piece. But as Mike said, by and large, the ownership of a horse, it should be the LLC taking out the insurance.
Okay. Okay, so that wraps up the Q&A. And so if you have any follow-up questions for the panelists, please contact any of us using the emails that you'll see on the screen. So there's all of our photographs, there's all of our names. You don't have to jot these down right now, audience. When we have the recorded version of the panel up, you can always come back to this in case you want to reach out to any one of the panelists or to myself. So,
and everybody, please note that these pictures were all 20 years old.
Okay.
Hey.
Well, maybe not Morgan. So
Not Morgan.
Yeah.
That's
The
right.
rest
not
of us are
Morgan.
using our college graduation pictures.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank all the panelists for your time and insights on this. It's an important matter. We've had owners ask for this, and we appreciate your being here, taking the time to be here today. Really like to thank our audience for being here and for owners who invest in our sport, because as we mentioned in the beginning, without owners, we just simply don't have an industry. So next month, we're going to be back in July with another online webinar on the topic of the economics for our sport. And I got to tell you, we have an amazing lineup of speakers. I've been looking at the data and a lot of the stats that we're going to go over in this panel, and you really don't want to miss that July webinar. Again, we've got another great lineup of speakers. This is a topic where we just talked about purses, and we're going to be talking about costs, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different things as it relates to the economics of our sports as it relates to an owner. So just watch for our announcements on when that takes place. But until then, we wish everybody well. Thanks again, panelists, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yep.
And audience, we hope you visit the Winter Circle, and we hope you visit it often. Take care, everybody, and
Good luck.
see you again next month. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.